my friends. I hope you're having a wonderful day. The sun is starting to shine for the first time this year. The grass is growing, birds are chirping, and I picked up Have a Nice Death, so I've been spending my free time down in my basement in the dark playing. The game really caught my eye at the 2021 Game Awards as I endured that 3-hour show and waiting in vain for news on anything I remotely cared about. Have a Nice Death really stood out to me as a highlight of the show. The combat and beautiful hand-drawn art style have been stuck in my brain since then, and I had been patiently waiting for a Switch release. Before we begin, I know there is some discrepancy between roguelikes and roguelites, but for the sake of simplicity, and since I've seen both tossed around at the same games, I'm just going to refer to these as roguelites in this video, and if you could explain the difference to me, please leave me a comment. With games like Hades and Dead Cells receiving just massive critical acclaim, the genre seems to be more popular than ever. Unfortunately, I have not played either of those games yet despite all their acclaim, and it's for a very simple reason. I just don't think roguelikes were made for me. If you were to ask me what I look forward to when playing any game, I would say that I look forward to exploring a fully realized world that I can get lost in, and venturing through unknown territory to find monsters or to find secrets and cool stuff. I love to dive into a world and experience everything it has to offer, turning over every leaf to find any secrets it hides. I love to see character growth and feeling that sense of getting stronger as I progress, whether that's getting new items, leveling up, stat points, or best of all, just getting more skilled with the combat. Not to mention a compelling story and running into familiar faces along the way that encourage me to keep pressing on. These are reasons that I love games like Zelda, Hollow Knight, and Tunic. They just speak to me and what I look forward to when playing a game. Roguelikes seemingly do away with most all of these things. A lot of them are even randomly generated, so I've just kind of reserved myself to say, hey, I'm happy so many people seem to love these games, more power to you, just probably not for me. But there's always been that curious desire in the back of my mind to give them a try. Watching the trailers for Have a Nice Death, I decided to take the plunge and give roguelikes a try and see what all the fuss is about. And after spending some time with the game, I think I understand the appeal and why the genre has become so popular, especially recently. Have a Nice Death is a really visually pleasing game. The hand-drawn art style, dark and moody atmosphere kind of remind me of another game that I seem to mention a lot in my videos. Anyway, yeah, this aesthetic really appeals to me. The main office and the first apartment you start off in have very little color at all, a lot of blacks, grays, and muted blues. But once you start making your way through the other departments, different colors start to pop through, and that juxtaposition helps each new area stand out a lot and really makes you appreciate the splash of color they do provide even more. Moving through each department is fairly quick, so the change up in visuals is very welcome to keep all the repetitive background elements from becoming stale. You'll be seeing the first area at the start of each run, so thankfully, its minimalistic designs take a long while to feel tiresome. The movement is so smooth and fluid. I love the way death just glides over the ground so quickly. There are a lot of options at your disposal for both movement on the ground and in the air. Equipped with a dash and also being able to use the sides to propel upwards and slam down to quickly deal with enemies all around is just so satisfying. The combat in general is extremely satisfying, even just watching how fast and zippy everything is while putting together clips for footage is a treat. Grabbing all different kinds of spells and weapons as you make your way through the halls of Death Incorporated are a lot of fun to experiment with and find new favorites. The bow in particular was a highlight for me. This being my first time with a roguelike, I now understand just how important that combat feel is. The game doesn't have much of anything to fall back on if the combat doesn't feel perfect. Thankfully, Have a Nice Death combat lands super well. Even though I'm still not very good at the game, I'm having a lot of fun and I think I understand the appeal of the genre. Roguelikes promote a complete mastery of its combat and systems. That's the whole point, to master the game's mechanics so well that you can beat the entire game without dying. Almost like a speedrunner who learns a game inside and out. Metroidvanias have that to some extent, learning patterns and that sense of mastery, but the stakes here are just so much higher. Like I said, I'm still not very good. I definitely have not mastered the game, but beating bosses and clearing floors with the limited skill I do have is very rewarding. I completely understand the rush of being on a great run and pulling out a clutch victory. It's a feeling not many games can provide without some self-imposed challenge. When you stop to take a look at the bosses outside of the stress of fighting them in the middle of a run, their attacks are generally well telegraphed and not overly complicated. If I could more easily force myself to take my time with each boss, I would definitely do a lot better. But when I'm in the middle of a run and the stress of having to start all over again makes it hard for me to do that. There are a few other systems at work that give Have a Nice Death some much appreciated variety in gameplay. At the start of each run, you choose a contract to sign that usually involves some kind of reward for completing a certain task, like getting to a certain department, or killing a certain number of enemies in an allotted amount of time, or without taking any damage. These contracts offer some fun, self-imposed kind of challenge to keep you engaged. Curses provide buffs as well as debuffs to your scythe, magic, or even passive effects, like infusing your attacks with freeze or raising one of your stats. You get these after each boss and sometimes as a reward on a difficult floor. I really enjoy being able to choose curses that complement my playstyle and feeling like I am getting stronger as I progress through the run. Like I said, I understand why so many people like these games, but unfortunately, I think I've gotten just about as much enjoyment out of them as I possibly will. I just have too many problems that I think stem more from the genre as a whole than just this specific game. For me personally, I don't feel that sense of motivation to press on through a tough boss fight when I get sent back to the start and have to work my way through everything again just to get back to that same point and give it another go. The further I get into the run, the more discouraged I feel to try again because it feels like all that time I spent was just wasted. This is a problem so many games can have regardless of genre, where they put a tough challenge so far from the last checkpoint that it's hard to feel like you can learn and master a boss battle when it takes so long to get back there. I mean, I'm willing to throw myself at a brick wall over and over as long as I can get back there quickly and not have to worry about losing a bunch of health on the way. I also feel like the healing system in this game in particular was really not made for me. Acquiring the animas feels way too few and far between, especially with how high the stakes are for dying. I don't get hit a lot by the smaller enemies, but the difficulty spike that the bosses pose are pretty dramatic and they hit really hard. Just a couple of mistakes while trying to learn the moveset and telegraphs will send you right back to the beginning. And like I said, the further I make it to a run, the less motivated I feel to try to get back to where I was. I wish there was a system in place that rewarded skilled play with chances to heal instead of everything feeling so random and sparse. One of the things that frustrates me the most about this game's design is the platforming challenges. Sometimes there will be a hallway of hazards that you need to get through, and I don't know if I'm just missing something, but these sections are just so horribly designed, and I don't think it's possible to get through some of them without taking damage, which in some cases is the challenge. It doesn't come up very much, but they honestly feel just kind of lazily implemented. I'd rather them just not be there at all. And I know I just spent some time bashing the game, but overall I really liked playing Have a Nice Death, and I found enjoyment in what it is instead of getting caught up in the game that I wish it was. But I think I've hit my limit on that enjoyment with only making it past the first handful of bosses. I don't have much motivation to press on and try to beat the game. I'm sure I'll still pick it up from time to time for a quick run to see how far I can get, but nothing super serious. I basically feel like it's almost like an arcade game at that point for me. So, unfortunately, I don't really think I can say I'm into roguelikes at this point. I don't have any plans to pick up Hades or Death Cells, but especially with Zelda coming out soon, I'm going to have zero time. But I do have an appreciation for them and a deeper understanding of why so many people like them. But let me know what you guys think down in the comments. Are you in love with this genre still, or are you starting to get fatigued? I really would love to hear your thoughts, or if you have any suggestions of any other different games you think I should try. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.